So we might have a few more people joining us as time goes on, but welcome to everybody who has signed in today for our National Ag Day Farmer Time session with Forestry Industry. I'd like to introduce Beth Weldon from Forest Learning, and we also have Gavin Livingston and Sarah Maddison joining us today to share their expertise with us. So I'll hand over to you, and we really look forward to hearing all the things you have to share with us today. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Libby, and welcome to everybody from around Australia. I'm so sorry to hear of all that's happening in South Australia too. There are a few things to know. You probably are Zoomed out and you know all about Zoom, but in case you're a bit new to Zoom, like some might be, there are some features of Zoom that I'd like you to know as we move forward. One being the view that you get. So up in your top right-hand corner, there is a little button that says Speaker View, or you can toggle that into having tiles of people. So depending on what you would prefer, feel free to toggle the view settings of what you see on your screen and what you project for your students. The other thing I'd like you to note is this is live. So if you have a question, there is a chat box down the bottom, and you can click on that chat and you can send us a question that you would like us to answer. So that'll be really good. Depending on how many we've got, it might be intimate enough that we can have some verbal and you can put your microphone on and ask your questions yourself. Otherwise, please feel free to use the chat. So I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Beth Weldon. I'm the Manager for Forest Learning Education, which is an initiative of Forest and Wood Products Australia. It's a research and development corporation, which is half funded by government, Australian government, and half funded by industry levies. So we are the blue sky approach for research and development in the forest industries. And that's very similar to other industries around Australia, like Livestock Australia and others that are research and development corporations. And today we're very excited to welcome our foresters, Gavin Livingston and Sarah Maddison, who are really excited to be here with you today and to share a little bit more about their role and day-to-day life as a forester, and also to share about the industry and where does wood come from. So we're really excited to be here today. So I'm just going to share my screen here to show you that trees are awesome. And we all know that. We love being outdoors. There's a lot of research around being outdoors and well-being, health and well-being. And so we're here today to share a little bit more about our passion for trees and for forests. Forest Learning is in partnership with the Prime Industries Education Foundation in Forester Time today, and we're really thankful for that, for all the team at Prime Industries Education Foundation. And all of our resources that are housed on the Forest Learning website are also up on Prime Zone as well, so primezone.edu.au that you can check out. And our new development is Forest VR that we're doing in conjunction with the Geography Teachers Association of Victoria and the Design and Technology Teachers Association of Victoria. So if there's anything that we miss from today or you'd like to catch up, you can visit virtual forests, which might be particularly important right now in South Australia. If you can't get to a forest, go visit one virtually. So today we're going to be looking at sustainable forest management. What is it? That's a big words, but seeing the wood for the trees. And we've got Gavin and Sarah here to help you explore more of that. So Gavin is going to be speaking up first, and he's from Vic Forests in Victoria, but has come from Tasmania and has travelled a lot. So you'll hear about his journey, his study journey, and what he loves about doing forestry. Sarah is a very passionate communicator and drone operator, UAV operator, all into the high tech. So if anyone's out there looking at technology and wanting to use it in their day-to-day job, then Sarah will be a great person to catch an ear with and hear more about how you can enter this sort of career. So I'd like to introduce Gavin, and thank you, Gavin, for being here today.
Thanks, Beth, and yeah, great work on for everyone involved in getting this series of webinars made available. Just give me 2 seconds to get my presentation up and let me know anyone if you're having sort of struggles to see that at all. Hopefully I've just got it up now.
Perfect.
Yep, all good. And yeah, and I suppose welcome to everyone calling in today from different parts of the country. I hope you enjoy some of the things that myself and Sarah talk about. Before, I suppose, sort of touching on, what is forestry, what is forest, and sort of giving a bit of an introduction to the place that I work, I just wanted to talk about the sort of the pathway and how I sort of got to working in the forestry industry itself. And the other thing to sort of keep in mind today, and my desire for anyone tuning in, is in sort of showing you the different things about the forestry industry and what I do and what Sarah does. I hope you sort of come out of it sort of thinking that the industry is a really cool place to work, and it becomes potentially for some of you a focus of where you might want to sort of work or study in the future. So for me, growing up was in northeast Tasmania. It's in a small country town near Launceston, for some people who might know where that sort of city is in northern Tasmania. And this, you can sort of see in the pictures here in the outdoors and the forest. This is the sort of place that I grew up. You can see my house in the top right, but with an upbringing in this sort of environment and some family history in working in forest and land management, I think I had my eyes set on it, working it and having a career in the forestry from a young age. Going back to high school, which is a little while ago now for me, a couple of things I remember is, one, I like geography and biology, and I dislike chemistry. So for those people out there who dislike chemistry, don't worry about it too much. After high school, for me, this is just a bit of I suppose a timeline of sort of my education path. But after finishing high school, I then started a degree in environmental management through the University of Tasmania in Hobart. And that degree was really able to sort of cater for my interests in, plant science, geography, and that general interest in wanting to work in the forestry industry. After finishing my initial degree in environmental management, or natural environment and wilderness studies, I was sort of keen to go on and do further study. I enjoyed the student lifestyle, long summer holidays, and on top of that, I wanted to learn more about forest and forest science, and that led me on to doing a master's degree in forest ecosystem science at the University of Melbourne. And after completing that, I then moved interstate from Tasmania to Victoria to start working for a state government forestry organisation called VicForest. Getting back to, I suppose, basics about what is a forest and what is forestry. Well, starting off, what is a forest? So a forest is much more than a group of trees. A forest is habitat for animals and plants. It is also an ecosystem where the soil, water, temperature, plants, animals, and microorganisms interact to maintain balanced life cycles. Onto what is forestry, both being a science and an art form. There's a sort of a couple of definitions or sort of points listed here, and forestry can be a blend of all of them, but forestry can be the science of planting and taking care of trees and forests, and it also, in terms of producing timber as a part of forestry can be the management of some areas for timber production. And I suppose there comes the sort of question, why do areas of forest in Australia need to be managed for timber production? Well, this is, I suppose, a good sort of slide to summarise, but just sort of saying wood and the things derived from wood. So wood fibre is everywhere. So, depending on where you're sitting today, whether that might be a classroom or watching from home, wood comes from the desk that your computer could be sitting on, or the chair that you're sitting on, or the desk that you use to study at school. And so these are some of the things in the classroom, but also importantly, wood is used to build build houses. So I've got a few other things listed on that slide, furniture, flooring as well. So yeah, wood is everywhere, and wood just doesn't make the big things in life. So houses, desks and furniture, but wood also makes other things that we use every day. So the paper that we write on, to make the cardboard box that you have items delivered in from Amazon or Australia Post. So in thinking about that, there's not many places you can turn today or tomorrow and not know that that thing is derived from wood. This is a good, I suppose, slide just to iterate that why we should use, or another slide to iterate why we should use wood is talking about how the product is not only renewable, but once it's actually in the environment, how easily it breaks down and how biodegradable it is compared to other products, such as aluminium cans, plastic bags, and plastic bottles, which can take up to 450 years to break down. And on top of that, thinking about climate change and the world of carbon, that's very important to all of us, is that we have to importantly think about the products that we use on a day-to-day, or the products that we use around us, is when they're made, how much carbon is emitted in that process. And importantly with wood, it actually, during its production and management, there's actually sequesters carbon, as opposed to when concrete and steel is produced, there's actually carbon emissions made. And I suppose that the last one I'd like to add, just a sort of a take-home point on this slide, is in life or in general, if you can't grow it, you have to mine it. So another reason why we should all be using wood. This slide is a good one just to iterate why wood is a renewable material and what the sustainable forest management cycle. So on the right hand side, we've got the planting of the forests, all the way through them growing for a set period of time. They're further managed and they're harvested. And I suppose the important thing about this cycle is that after harvesting occurs, is that site is rehabilitated, regenerated and replanted to continue that sustainable forest management cycle. I know there's this one might be hard for some people to see out there, and there's a lot of information and captions on this one, but a few take-home points is why around the sort of the carbon capture in forests is that trees and wood store carbon, making it a solution to fight climate change. Approximately 50% of wood is carbon, and carbon is locked away out of the atmosphere in wood products for the life of that product. So in summarising, the renewable cycle and the carbon benefits is the question that comes up: what is an easy way to help the environment? Well, that is to use wood. Moving on to timber production in forests. So while I'm talking about wood and why it's important and it's around us, and wood is good, and it's everyday, it's around us every day and we're using it all the time, but where is this wood produced in Australia? So in Australia, timber production or wood production comes from both natural and native forests, as well as plantation forests. So natural forests being a forest composed of indigenous trees and not classified as forest plantations. And these natural forests are mainly made up of eucalypts or pines. For plantation forest, how they differ is that these forests are established by planting or seeding in the process. And in Australia, plantation forests are made up of both pine and eucalypt species. And I suppose the key difference is when you're driving around, you're looking out the window, the key difference is in natural or native forests and plantation forests is that native forests are made up of many different species, and they have different structures, whereas plantation forests are typically just a single type of species. They're all planted at the same age, and it's all very uniform. The last sort of point to take home from this slide is, in terms of wood production in Australia, while only plantation forest makes up a small area, so being 6%, 88% of timber, total timber production in Australia comes from plantations, and only a small level comes from native forests, while native forests make up the majority of forest area in Australia. The next few are just sort of next few slides are just a couple of pictures to show the forestry cycle and show a simplified view of it. But in the top right, we've got people out on the ground planting seedlings, working hard. After a set period of time, after those forests grow, in the bottom right hand corner, which in sort of typically in plantations in Australia, plantations are grown between 10 to 30 years of age. After that time, the trees are harvested during a forestry harvesting operation on the bottom left. And after that time, after harvesting has occurred, the site is then rehabilitated and replanted, and new seedlings are put back on the ground, importantly to continue that sustainable forest management cycle. The native or the natural forest cycle differs a little bit. So starting off with young seedlings in the ground in the top right hand side, those seedlings grow on roughly in Australia for forests that we operate in for timber production 50 to 80 years. After that sort of set period of time, harvesting may occur depending on the designation of that area, if timber harvesting is allowed. So timber harvesting occurs, and then after that time, the site is then regenerated and replanted. But the difference between the native and the plantation example is, in native forests, is that before harvesting occurs, we actually collect the seed from the site. So we collect the natural seed from the site, which you can see in the top left-hand side. And then that seed is actually thrown back on the harvested area to actually assist in the regeneration. And then again, that site is able to sort of grow back and regenerate and continue that sustainable forest management cycle. On to who I work for in Victoria. So that is Vic Forest. Vic Forest operates in natural and native forests designated for timber production. And while the organisation is responsible for many things, but around the management of forests, it's responsible for the planning, sustainable harvesting and regenerating of forests. So if there's one sort of point for you guys to take away, is that any areas that, say, Vic Forests or other forestry companies operate in at any time, they're responsible to replant and regenerate those sites, again, to continue that sustainable forest management cycle. Moving on, I suppose, a little bit closer to what I do and sort of my role within Vic Forests is, while this is a sort of simplified view of forest management and forest management planning in native or natural forests, but I've simplified it down to some of the key steps here. Is I'm actually part, and my sort of role on the ground is part of the planning process and the on-ground assessments, doing surveys and transects in forest areas before timber harvesting occurs. On top of myself and teams of people like me within the organisation, we do transects and surveys on the ground, and then other further surveys are done actually after I've walked on the ground. So we actually look for animals, endangered plants, as if we identify certain animals or plants and they're endangered, we are then required to protect them, which can actually sometimes mean if we identify certain animals or plants that are threatened in the areas in which we want to operate, we actually can't, because the area has to be excluded to protect a certain animal or plant species. So all of those things are sort of done at the start or in the planning process, and then that information feeds into an operational COOP plan. The operational COOP plan basically details how we can harvest the site while protecting all the values that are identified on the ground from mile work. So those features on the ground that need to be protected, they could be hollow-bearing trees, so houses for animals, or they could be streams, other types of vegetation that we need to protect. So that all that goes in the operational COOP plan. The area is harvested, and then after that time, the site is then regenerated, continuing that sustainable forest management cycle. Here's, I suppose, a few sort of cool pictures, but again, just sort of detailing on part of the initial part of the timber harvesting planning, and a few sort of cool shots here, but just it can show you the sort of environment that that we have to walk through, operate in, and again, it makes it one of the cool parts of our work, and it makes it a really fun workplace. But myself and my co-workers, these are the things that we're doing. So we're doing transects and surveys on the ground, and we're looking for particular values that need to be protected. So I've just got a few listed here: streams, habitat, hollow-bearing trees, as well as other important values. And again, the things that we identify on the ground, they'll either we identify to protect them, and those values will be protected during harvesting. A few more cool shots describing the office that I get to work in, but on the left-hand side, we've got this is in winter in the Victorian high country. Me and my co-worker doing some surveys and transects, and then on the far right, I've got a different sort of forest type pictured there, and it's not so fun when we have to work in the rain, and the conditions can sometimes be a little bit miserable. These, I suppose, again, in that sort of planning process, and what I'm doing on the ground, these are the things that we're actually looking for and we need to protect during timber harvesting. So in the pictures, these are actually hollow-bearing trees that are protected during timber harvesting. So what myself and my co-worker are doing as a part of these transects, we're actually putting that data in a mobile device, and that sort of differs from sort of years ago. We used to sort of do transects on the ground, record everything, pen and paper, and then upload that information onto our databases and systems. But now actually we walk around with a phone, we walk up to hollow-bearing trees and features that need to be protected. We put that feature in our phone on a map, and that actually synchronizes to the cloud, and that all that data is accessible at any point in time. This is, I suppose, just to sort of show what the areas in which we operate look like after timber harvesting occurs, and importantly, as a part of this operation. So some trees are taken, which is visible, and some are left. And importantly, the ones that are left are the I suppose, large hollow-bearing trees that animals live in. And if we protect those at the site, timber harvesting and the things and animals that live in trees can coexist. After this timber harvesting operation, the site is then regenerated again to continue that sustainable forest management cycle. And for this area of forest that was harvested in 2017, 2018, the regeneration around these other trees would be at probably head high after a few years. Another one I sort of touched on before, but it just sort of gives a description of how old the forests are that we operate in. And they're around that sort of 50 to 80 sort of year mark before we would operate in certain areas. And if you, as I said, if you went back to the site today and you looked at the area where timber harvesting occurred, this is what you're sort of likely to see. So seedlings coming up after the harvest, you'll see trees that are around that are retained, that we retained during the operation, but you'll importantly see young eucalypts coming up, again, to continue that sustainable forest management cycle. Just, I'm on to the last few slides here, and Sarah would talk a lot about some of the cool things that the forestry industry does in terms of technology, but I just wanted to sort of say that some people, when they think of forestry, they might think it's very manual, or we're using, you know, our notebook and pen to do a lot of tasks, but the forestry industry as a whole is a smart industry. So on the ground, we're using phones, we have sophisticated mapping, we're using drones. So that goes to sort of say to you that some of you that love the outdoors and working in the outdoors and you like using technology, forestry can be a really good place for you to work if you have both of those interests. On to the last part, or my last slide, is again, me wanting more people to work in this industry. And I think it's a really good place to work, but a couple of points that I wanted to iterate here is just to highlight the diversity of jobs that are available in this forestry sector. So typically, like in an organisation of whom I work for, which has around 100 employees, we have a range of staff and a range of roles. So we've got ecologists, planning staff like me, biodiversity specialists, people that supervise the contractors. So I just wanted to sort of say that in working in the forestry industry, you're not just going to supervise contractors harvesting trees. There's a range of jobs that are out there. And the other one too is the people that work in my organisation and in the industry, they have a range of backgrounds too. So you don't just have to have a science degree to work in the industry. Some of my co-workers have studied geography, ecology, policy, computer modelling, a whole range of things. And I suppose for people that are sort of thinking out there about their next steps, if they wanted to enter into this industry, I just wanted to iterate that a science degree isn't required. And often some of my co-workers they've actually done sort of diplomas in forest management at the TAFE level or certificates. So if you don't actually think you're the way inclined to want to do sort of 3 or 5 years or 6 years at university like I did, there's actually an easy way to enter the industry and to sort of start working it after school. So that is that. And my last point is, yeah, give it a go. If if you think you might be interested, try and do some work experience for a forestry company in your state to have a taste and see if it's what you want to do. And again, there's other ways of giving things a go, through internships and volunteering. Thanks, guys. I think that's the last one, and just sort of coming into the questions. But if you don't have any sort of questions now, or more questions come as Sarah's speaking, do put them in the chat box. I actually can't see that now, but put it in the chat box and we'll probably get to it right at the end.
That's great. Thank you so much, Gavin. And I really appreciate you sharing a lot more about your day-to-day role. It looks amazing to be in the snow. I live up here in Brisbane, and so that snow looked absolutely amazing. You might think it's horrible, but I think it'll be fantastic. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I would also like to say that, so Gavin works in Victoria. There are forestry organisations in every state and territory of Australia. So no matter where you live, there is a job for you. And the other great thing is that the world is your oyster. There are forestry organisations in literally every country in the world, apart from those in the Sahara Desert. So if you're looking for world travel, when COVID passes and we get vaccinated, or if you want to travel Australia and see more of Australia, then this is a great industry to be part of. So thank you so much, Gavin. And I'd like to introduce Sarah, who is also working in Victoria, but her role is quite different to Gavin's, who's on the ground as a forester. Sarah works in technology and in assisting foresters like Gavin in their planning.
Is there some way of this not turning off or something?
Sorry, Andrew. So yeah, I'd like to introduce Sarah, and yeah, I'll speak to you after Sarah, and we'll have some questions.
Thank you. I'll just get my presentation up for you guys. Okie dokie, how's that looking? Good.
Great.
Great, thank you. Alrighty, so I'd like to talk a little bit about plantation forestry and what I do in the plantation forestry industry. Mostly I work with geographic information systems, which is GIS, remote sensing, such as satellite technology, and using UAVs or drones. Really, it's all about getting good data, and good data equals informed decision making. So I work as a small business owner of Geologic Spatial Services, and we provide GIS and UAV services across Northeast Victoria to companies such as HVP Plantations. I've also worked for HVP in a variety of roles over the past 5 years, such as GIS officer, harvest planning, stewardship, and currently I'm working on fire salvage and rehabilitation after last summer's big fires. So HVP spans pretty much all across Victoria and a little bit into South Australia, just on the corner there. We have 240,000 hectares of estate. Of that, there's 160,000 hectares of plantation, which is mostly Pinus radiata. And we also have 50,000 hectares of native vegetation that we manage for conservation and heritage reasons. And who are we at HVP? Our staff range from graduate students from uni through to specialists in silviculture, which is the growing of trees, harvesting staff, safety staff, logistics, and some forest scientists as well. Some staff join us straight out of high school and come onto our summer cruise, and others are actually celebrating their 50th year this year. And we're all firefighters, and this is our yearly fire training day. So we all get certified every year with the CFA so that we can help look after our forests and communities every summer. Okay. How did I get into forestry? I didn't start working in forestry until I was in my mid-20s. I went to high school in Albury on the New South Wales Victorian border. I studied drama, art and music and did not do any maths or sciences. I didn't see a forestry degree in my future, but I managed to get through it anyway. So even if you don't think that that's potentially where you're heading, you can change your mind later and still get there anyway. So I've recently completed a Bachelor of Environmental Science, Land and Water at Charles Sturt Uni. And I thought that was really great. It was very flexible and it let me do a lot of GIS, and it also let me even do some computing subjects in an environmental science degree, which was very helpful. So what I do in the forest, my favourite thing is flying the drone. The drone I use is a DJI Phantom Pro 4. I am sure some of you have seen these, or maybe you have them yourselves. They are really great technology and the price keeps coming down. So they're getting more and more popular out and about. I really like working with this drone as it has some really good features in the forest, like its return to home function. If something goes wrong, it will come back to me, and that's very comforting. It's got really good stability for taking photos on windy days, things like that. It's got collision avoidance sensors, which are super handy. Those sensors have let me know even when eagles were nearby, and eagles are my biggest hazard when I'm flying the drone in the forest. They aren't scared of anything, and they're tougher than my drone, and they're very interested in what I'm doing. And I have a bit of a theory that it looks almost like a chicken to them. So they definitely come in for a look on most of my flights. Different kinds of drone flights that we do require different kinds of flight planning. This is one of the most intensely planned flights that I've done. This was a stand of trees in the forest. It was a bit of a hill, a few hills in the middle and a few gullies, and we just put some seedlings in. So they're tiny little seedlings about the size of your hand, and it can be very difficult to get clear photos of those. So what I was trying to do was capture enough photos to stitch together a really nice map so that we could actually count all of the seedlings that had survived after being planted. So this was my flight path. Each of those lines the drone travelled along, and it was quite clever, the technology now. So it knew what the rise and fall of the hill was underneath it, and it adjusted its own height to keep it at a relatively even height above the ground all the way across the block. And each one of those little dots is a photo point. Pre-harvest flights are another kind of flight that we do, and that's often a manual flight. So I will fly the drone myself without using flight planning across a block. And what we're normally doing there is looking to see if we have the boundaries mapped right. Is there anything that we need to add to the map for harvesting so that we can do the job in the best possible way? Are there any gaps in the forest where wind might have blown trees over? Those kind of things. Information that we capture on those flights helps us build maps that go straight into the harvesting machines. So they use iPads and other computer tech in their machinery so that they can harvest the block in a way that promotes the best environmental and product outcome. Another one of my favourite flight types is stockpile analysis. We have a lot of quarries in our forest as we need to build a lot of roads to get our trees to where they're going. We took hundreds of images up at this quarry in Shelley. We took them from the top down, and we took them on a whole lot of angles as well, so that we could help build a map to figure out how much rock we had available to us to build roads. These photos produced these maps. The one on the right is all of the images stitched together, and using that we could delineate our rock stockpiles there. 1, 2, and 3 have all been crushed into quite small sizes. 4 and 5 are slightly larger rocks still. What it let us do was then build an elevation model just using the drone's photos and the sonic sensors it has underneath it as it flies. So the area in blue on the left is the part of the quarry that is very low and comes all the way up to the rock stockpiles, which are the yellow, and the top wall of the quarry in the bright red there. So that let us calculate our volumes and figure out exactly how many roads we could build with the rock that we had. Okay, so this is LiDAR is something that's coming into forestry in a very helpful manner now, and it can be done with drone technology similar to building those digital elevation models. And it can also be done with ground vehicles, or even with a backpack, I believe. Some folks can stick a backpack on and go and capture this data for us. So what it does is it uses LiDAR, light detecting and ranging, to build a data model. Lots of data points kind of build a model of the trees within our forest. So not only do we know how many trees we've got, where they are, we know what condition they're in. We know how long the limbs are, and we know if there's any bending or anything like that. We get a great picture of what is in our forest. Another one of my favourite types of drone flights is stewardship and protected species surveys. So this uses a thermal infrared on our drones, and Gippsland do this a lot more than the northeast of Victoria. Our koalas are fewer and further between, but down in Gippsland in HVP, we will pop a drone up at 4 o'clock in the morning with a heat sensing thermal infrared camera, go and find any koalas that might be sitting in the trees we wanted to harvest that day, and either change our plans or pop them down out of the tree and move them into a safe zone where they are happy and far away from the machinery for the day. We also can use the drone to do survival counts and to look at forest health. So this uses a different kind of near infrared. This helps us differentiate between different types of vegetation because plants reflect a slightly different colour in the spectrum, in the kind of red infrared that we can't see with our naked eyes. So this can tell us the different plants, and it can also tell us if our plants are sick, if they need any extra treatments. Okay. This is a photo I took when I was looking at forest health, and you can see here that there are some trees that are not green and happy on top. However, I can tell you that if you were walking through the bush, you wouldn't actually be able to see that from the bottom of the stand. So it's very helpful to have that top-down view really close up to see what your trees are doing. And that helps us make decisions about if we might want to do some extra fertilizing to look after these trees. And our fertilizing can be done by helicopter or by ground. Okay. All of these different kinds of drone flights is basically about capturing new data, good data, and that helps us really plan things down really precisely. For example, if we get boundaries right on our planting maps, then we can count very precisely how many trees and how many seedlings we might need to refill that block after we've done a harvest. So this is my favorite project that wasn't actually using a drone, but what we were using was inventory data captured by people walking through the forest and recording what our trees looked like, harvesting machine GPS data, remote sensing, satellite imagery here as shown on the right, and GIS mapping. And by pulling all of those things together, we could do real-time updates to our operators and staff to tell them how their harvesting operation was going and if it was meeting the expectations of what we thought was in the bush. So this is a block of trees off the Lake Buffalo Carbore Road, just south of Myrtleford in northeast Victoria. And I took these photos as the fires came through on, I think it was the 4th or 5th of January this year, just at the end of this block was where I captured these images. And you can see in the satellite, the area here is quite brown and burnt. And we've got some stuff just around the corner that's actually still green and it didn't get burnt at all. So we used a lot of satellite imagery once the smoke had cleared to figure out what kind of impacts the fire had and to map out our new boundaries accordingly. So using this information, we planned to harvest our burnt areas, and using the inventory information we already captured, we calculated what kind of products we might be able to get from the trees that had been burnt. This is then the GPS data that comes back from the harvesting machine every week. So a different colour for every week, and I would then map that in our system using both the GPS data and the satellite imagery to track how the harvesting was going. Okay, so for every tree that gets cut down, we get a GPS point and the harvesting machine reports straight back to us what products it cut out of it. And that helps us build reports like this by joining all of that information together. So if something's going wrong in the bush, we can go and correct it immediately. There are so many innovative tech opportunities coming up in the forestry industry. It just gets more exciting every day as technology gets cheaper and easier to use. Drones, obviously, remote sensing like satellite technologies, LiDAR mapping and inventory, virtual reality like Beth talked about earlier, and even augmented reality for planning blocks, which is similar to what apps like Pokemon use. So you're seeing reality, but with an extra overlay for you in the bush, which is very helpful for planning. There's a lot of different career paths into forestry, much like Gavin talked about. Just within our business, we've got technology and IT solution specialists, GIS specialists, scientists, land and water managers, people that look after our products and our customers at the mills. We've got logistics and wood flow who manage all the trucks and get our product where it needs to go. We have safety and community specialists, and we have our roading and quarries. Thank you very much, everybody. And if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat or shout out.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. I've learned so much more about what you do, and I knew the tip of the iceberg, so I was really excited. I'm also excited to see the Geography Teachers Association of Victoria here, so that they can also have a glimpse about the different technologies used in geospatial modelling and mapping that you use every day. So thank you so much. We have about 5 minutes before we've got to wrap up this session. So if there was anyone, I think we're probably intimate enough that we can probably unmute your microphone and ask a question if you have one for Gavin or for Sarah, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. And remembering too, even if you have a burning question later, please feel free to contact me. Oh, here's a question. Is there much entomology involved? Probably Gavin, that'd be more for you, entomology. If you unmute yourself, Gavin.
Thanks there for the yep. All right, I'm off mute now. Yeah, entomology, I suppose not so much in terms of sort of our main focus in the areas that we operate in native forest. We're heavily focused on protecting the things that the things that animals live in, so large hollow-bearing trees, and making sure that those, when we're identifying them on the ground, they are protected so we can coexist and animals can live and survive in the areas we operate. But in terms of, I suppose, focusing on the smaller things, we actually, there are a lot of sort of studies that go in to sort of see how different insects and sort of, bugs and all that survive in certain areas or forests, and how they might be impacted at the start of an operation, but they quickly sort of return after harvesting occurs. But that's probably more at the research level. And again, for myself and people on the ground, yeah, we're more sort of focusing on the sort of the bigger picture and identifying, hollow-bearing trees and other sort of features like that.
And I think there's also note the difference with plantation forests, particularly pine forests and eucalypt forests, that are probably more prone for insect and pest attack. There are bands and groups of entomologists that come in to look at biocontrol agents, such as wasps, that lay eggs within the caterpillars, and when the eggs hatch, they eat the caterpillar out from the inside, and to reduce the need for any insecticides within those plantation forests. So yes, there is a whole field. My actual background is in entomology myself. So thanks, Jemima, for that question. I love entomology and insects probably as much as you do by the sound. So yeah, it's a very important role to keep our pests down so that we can reduce our pesticide use, which is very minimal within a plantation forest. I'm just reading if there's any other questions now. Yeah, and it looks like there's a lot of good feedback. So thank you everyone who wrote some kind words for us, and we might have to leave it there unless there's any further questions.
If there are further questions, don't hesitate to contact Beth at Forest Learning or myself at PIFA. And there's the session was recorded and will be made available in the next week or two. We'll let you know.
So thanks, Luciano, and everyone at Prime Industries Education Foundation. Thank you to all the schools and the teachers for organising to see this today. We really appreciate it. We do have another session tomorrow that is for primary schools, but there is no reason why high schools can't be involved. It is with Catherine Creswell down at Forico, who's looking at plantation management in Tasmania, in the northern parts of Tasmania. So we look forward to that session, and I hope you all enjoy a really good rest of your week and a good Christmas ahead. Thanks, Sarah and Gavin.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Gavin. Thanks, Beth.
Great. We'll see you next time.
And Eleanor, we'll let you know about accessing the video. We'll send you an email and we'll let you know when that's available.